So, David.
Yes.
Thanks for joining, coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
And taking a little time just to chit-chat, catch up. We've obviously been friends for a while. But
since you were 14 and went on that 14. Triathlon.
Yeah, ever since we I was the worst biker there. I was last place.
That was some cold water.
It was.
That took it out of all of you.
I always wondered why triathlons start with the swimming first, because by the time you do the swim, it's so cold that you were ready to give up and go home.
That's right.
Like, you might as well do that last.
It was pretty brutal.
Yeah. Plus, it was like 7 a.m. in the morning.
And you didn't have the mountain bike tires, did you?
No.
Oh, that was
no. I had mountain bike tires.
Yes, which is worse.
Which is worse. And my brakes were broken, so the brake was always sticking to the wheel.
Dude, could have gotten out and walked a bit faster than that.
No, I know. I was curious afterwards why I was so behind everybody else, and I found out my brake was broken and it was sticking to the wheel the whole time.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it was a bummer, but so let's just talk about a few different topics. I know we've kind of went over in previous what we wanted to discuss a little bit. And obviously we want to talk about some different life advice. I found it interesting when I was reading kind of what you typed up, that you put life coach in there, that's one of your passions, which makes sense because I've come to you with lots of it, like asking questions for advice, and you always give great advice, hence why I keep coming back. But I didn't know that was like one of your passion type items. But I guess that makes sense why you have like a library of self-help books.
That's right.
So what is, if when it comes to that category, why do you like, what gets you in that life coaching type mindset? What do you like about it?
That's a great question. I mean, there's a bunch of it that I did professionally. So I had teams of people, and part of your job is mentoring and coaching and helping them grow and develop.
Yeah.
But working with the youth, starting in this ward and helping them, that's one thing that I find that sometimes they want is advice from somebody else other than their parents. Because their parents are giving them great advice, but you live with your parents 24/7. They're always in your space. And so to get more advice from them, sometimes it's like, please, I've had enough of your advice. But when you start to hear the same messages from other people, and maybe it's a little bit easier to swallow.
Yeah.
It's a little bit easier to take some of that advice.
You're a little more receptive to it because you're not having to. Well, because your parents are probably giving it to you all the time.
Well, and when you're a young man from about 14 to 18, when all you speak is Neanderthal, you don't really speak in complete sentences, you don't want to acknowledge that they may know something. So if you can get that same advice somewhere else, it can be really helpful. Right.
That, and when it's paired with like, hey, like, here's some really good life advice. Also go clean those dishes,
Right.
Like, you're kind of like, meh, not as receptive, not as willing to do it, I guess.
Truth.
But what's your top? Because you got a surplus of books on life advice, and you're like my library that I come to. And but what are the top principles that you've noticed that advice you've given out? What are the things that kind of the reoccurring messages that you've noticed that you give or talk about, and maybe they're a little different, but
sure. Well, each person's unique, right? So they each have their own set of challenges, and challenges change through time.
Yeah.
But a couple things are helpful to think about. One is, if you think about God and his view of us, he wants to help us at every moment in our lives, but he also has the long view of our life. And so while we get frustrated, or we want to give up, or we're done with this, or we're sick of this trial, or we're like, please get me out of here, he has that ultimate patience, and he can help us kind of navigate because he has the long view on us. And so we're in our teens and we're like, nobody loves me and I hate my life and I'm just done. He's like, dude, you got 70 more years. Come on. You got tons of great things coming in your life. Stick this out. It'll happen. Yeah. And then another thing is just perspective. And that's such a hard one. And when we hear it, we all do the same thing. We're like, oh, yeah, perspective. And we're all like, oh, yeah, I can always use more perspective. But it's just that one thing that we need to be reminded of constantly. It's just, okay, get some perspective. Think about, and a lot of perspective comes with, okay, well, how far have I come? And looking back and saying, oh, yeah, I have come a long way. And yes, I'm still struggling right here. And yes, this is very difficult. But if I look back, I've grown in these ways. And we may not like the process of growing, but sometimes when we look back, we can see that growth and appreciate it a little bit more.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. It's not, we get hung up on the minute little pieces of life, right?
Sometimes.
And so by lengthening your scope, right? I don't remember who told me this, but it was like, they said, if you look at things in like the 100-year plan versus like the 1-year plan, like what really matters? A lot less matter. It's like the little things become a lot less important. So,
I think it was Monson too that said, be careful about being in the thick of thin things, because your life can be really busy, but do those things matter?
Right.
Which ones of those? And having that 100-year view of things can help you get perspective of that.
Yeah, I heard this great story. It was talked about like this statue in, I don't know, somewhere like Middle East, Egypt, where they built all the statues and the pyramids and stuff like that. And the statue had broken down. It was pretty crumpled up, but like there was just like the pedestal, and it said, here stands the man who ruled all things, or whatever, ruled the world at the time, right? And the guy pointed out that, here's a statue. He obviously had a lot of success at the time, right? Ruled the known world, and but here's a statue crumpled up, and like no one even knows who he is. And so pointing out that in the grand scheme of things, like our decisions aren't really as big as we think, So like really thinking about what are the important things in my life that matter and do make a lasting impact. And I just thought that was interesting. I was like, oh yeah, we do focus on a lot of the things that don't matter.
Truth. Well, and the other thing we tend to do is compare. And comparison is the mother of misery. So if you want to be miserable, start comparing your life to other people. Because somebody pointed out, I think it was in a seminar, that what we do is we compare ourselves with the best trait of these 20 people. And we say, but we're not that.
Right.
We're not the baseball player who can throw whatever mile an hour fastballs. We're not the football player who can make all these plays. We're not the business leader. We take the best thing of each one of these people and compare ourselves to that. It's like,
No, I think, well, and it stops us from doing anything, right? It stops us from moving forward, because a lot of the skills too come along the way, Now, granted, you probably won't like throw a baseball as fast as someone who has the natural gift. But that just comes down to selection.
Yes and no. So here's another principle that I try to teach, and that's that 10,000 hours principle. I know you've looked at that, which is somebody who has a ton of talent who doesn't practice will always be surpassed by somebody who has mediocre talent and practices and practices and practices. In fact, the definition of an expert or a professional in a field is not how much innate or raw talent they ever had. It's how many hours they've spent in that, focusing on that one thing.
True. No, that's a good point. Yeah, I think, I've never thought of it that way, because like, you think, I guess, well, there's a perfect example of like comparison, right?
Right.
You look in like, oh, there's no way like I could be that person.
Right.
But then again, you don't really need to be that person. You just need to be you.
You need to be you.
And build upon what like you have.
Right.
Which is why I always say like you should really think about, I don't know what we were talking about prior, but so I guess I'll just go
10,000 hours.
10,000 hours. That's right. So when we live in a time, like what do we do with the? I mean, there's so much exposure to information, and like seeing what everyone else is doing, and you're not really involved in their lives, but you see snippets. So the comparison game, I feel like it's almost a no-win scenario. Like unless you're completely tuning it out, which is almost impossible nowadays. But what do you do with also when you're getting flooded with that information? Because that's one point you had your community, but that was it.
Right.
You weren't seeing everyone else and what they're doing and comparing yourself to it and going, oh, I couldn't do that or I can't do this. And so I think a lot of people get like anxiety or like stress or pressure seeing that and feeling like they can't compete, which then just spirals. So what do you do? What do you do in those cases? It's kind of a tricky question.
It's a great question. I was thinking about this the other night. In the Revolutionary War, nobody knew what was happening.
Right.
Until Paul Revere spent all night riding his horse from town to, and there's several people that went, but from town to town to town to town. Those people didn't know what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so they counted on things like newspaper, some print media, and then news from other towns that kind of slowly made its way inward to let them know what was going on. So you're right. You compare that and you think about we can't comprehend waiting for the horse that may be here in a few days to tell us what's going on with this war. Yeah. What do you mean there was a battle at Lexington? First of all, where's Lexington? Secondly, what kind of battle? What happened? Well, somebody won or lost, right?
Right.
We would see it we'd see drone strikes and, pictures from the military and pictures from satellite and pictures from the ground. We would see it all unfold in real time. So, yeah, what do you do when everything is bombarding you?
Right.
And I don't know that there's a silver bullet answer other than you need to be real diligent and specific about what you choose to consume. Because if you sit in your phone, and this is you're choosing to sit and look at your phone, and whatever's there is coming into your mind and your brain, and you're seeing those pictures.
Right.
So you're the only one who can be deliberate and say, I'm not going to do this right now. So if you want to go back to what President Nelson said, he encouraged our youth to take a 7-day fast from social media. I guarantee you 1 in 1,000 did it.
Right.
Maybe. Did you do it? There's one. There's 1 of 1,000. But what that does is it instead of it becoming this habit and you're just like you're addicted to it, it breaks that addiction cycle and gives you a chance to say, oh, well, let me choose what I'm going to do. So consider sugar.
Right.
It's funny because I did a sugar fast for 30 days. And it's only the first week where it's really hard because you're in this habit of like, oh, cookie, soda, orange juice, just sugar, right? Then sugar's in everything, so it's hard to avoid it. So the first 7 days you have to be really, and it tastes so good. It's so good. It's so bad. Her name was Sugar. And so you have to be deliberate for that first week. And then after that, it's more of a habit. Oh, yeah, I don't go over there and I don't do that. I'm good. I've got my other stuff to replace it. So that's another thought. What do you replace consumption of all this crap with? That's a great question. What does your dad say all the time? When we were out on the farm, which is funny and everybody laughs, but he said we had nothing to do but drive that tractor for 8 hours a day. So we had time to sit and think.
Right.
And reflect and maybe meditate, or whatever the right words are. We just had downtime.
Yeah.
And so instead of being bombarded all the time, anyway, I get passionate about that because there's just so much coming at you. The only thing you can do is cut it off and then take it in chunks. Okay, I'm going to check my social media from this time to this time. Not every time I'm not doing something, I'm going to stop and look at my phone. That just feeds the addiction.
Right.
What's the app now that the Chinese developed specifically to
TikTok?
Be completely addictive? You can't put it down, and it drags you back in all the time.
Yeah,
TikTok.
Yeah.
Specifically designed to do that. Hey, dude, I game. So League of Legends. That game is designed when you play a game, you don't know how long it took until it's over. And then you wake up and you're like, 40 minutes went by? What happened to my life?
Right.
And then it wants to suck you back in. So pretty soon I started at 10 a.m. It's 6 p.m. My whole day's gone. I haven't done anything but sit there and click the mouse and look at images on the screen. What happened to my life? So anyway, your question was, well, what do you do about that?
Right.
You have to be deliberate.
Yeah, disciplined.
Discipline is a good word. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I it was weird. Well, have you read TikTok's like terms of service?
No.
I was like, you got to read it one time, but it goes, I mean, like everything. It has access to all your text messages, your data, your pictures, like everything. It like has access to all that. And so with you saying like it was designed to be all involved in your business and get you back in it. Yeah, it's true. It's all It's all in there.
And not to go to conspiracy theory, but
No, please.
these are people who understand how the brain works.
Yeah.
And so we don't understand how our brains work.
No.
They do. Your brain is listening whether you are listening or not.
Right.
Your brain is hearing and picking up whether you are listening or not.
Right.
And so they can feed all kinds of information to you. When I don't know, I'm a little bit nuts, but when my kids were 12, we stopped television.
Yeah.
There was no television in our home. I hated commercials. I hated commercialism. I said, no, we would watch movies on movie night and pick shows that were good, but we quit TV. And
Did it help? Did
it helped me.
Yeah.
I wasn't angry all the time because there's all, constant consumerism, but
yeah.
Anyway.
Well, that's the thing. Like they're trying to sell you on it, right? They're trying to get you to spend more time on it because that just helps them sell and do and move their business forward. So,
when you get people that are like, and I've counseled people and I've met with people and I've talked to people and I was in the bishopric for a while, you get, working in a religious setting and you get people who are like, I'm so miserable. I'm so unhappy. I'm so out of control. Well, you need to do this. Well, I can't.
right.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
Well, I can't do that. Or in other words, I'm not willing to give up all of this addiction,
Right.
even though it's costing me all this happiness.
They don't want to take control back.
Correct.
I was talking to, I think it was my siblings. I was talking to them and I told them, I can't remember what led to the conversation, but it was talking about check in versus check out. Check in versus and check out time. Mm-hmm. And a lot of time when you hop on the phone, it's checkout time, right? Mm-hmm. And so the question I think we were talking about was how do you get people to spend more time in check-in time versus check-out?
Sure.
And a lot of the time it really is like people want to stay in the checkout zone because it's relaxing, but it also it feeds more checkout time, right? So you just keep on getting more and more time spent in the checkout zone than
Sure.
you do in the check-in. And that's what you're talking about, right? It's taking back control of your time.
That's right. And sometimes that's hard. If I take control of my time, I have to be responsible that I'm literally wasting hours a day doing nothing.
Yeah.
That's painful.
Yeah.
That is painful. People would rather be checked out.
Especially when you like it.
Yeah. And except for then you're unhappy.
Right.
But
It's
I'm
short-term.
not I'm not willing to give up all these things that are making me unhappy. Yeah.
It's funny. I'm on I deleted Instagram and TikTok off my phone last week. So it's been maybe a week since I did it. Mm-hmm. And the funny part was, because I find myself on there frequently, like everyone. I don't know how much I was using it, but I just was like, I just felt better. Like I just felt like it was time to take a break. So I deleted those two. Facebook, I never was big into big swiper on Facebook, so I'll use it a little bit. But TikTok and Instagram, and I deleted those. And honestly, it wasn't hard to let it go once I just deleted it.
Sure.
I mean, it's not an addiction where I'm going to go search the cabinets for, the liquor or whatever, right? Right? It's not one of those addictions. I deleted it, and when I go on my phone, it's not there. So one, I'm not reminded to do it. And two, when I do think about it, I'm like, oh, that's tedious to go get it and download it again, re-upload. So it's just more steps that go, it's not worth it. And then I move on, and I focus on something else.
Yeah, when I start swearing and slamming things around, I know it's time to delete whatever game it is that
Yeah.
I should tell my son that one. Hey, when you're swearing at something, it's time to turn it off. It's time to be done. Well, and then, in some of my volunteer work, you talk to people that have addictions to pornography and things like that. And you're like, what are you willing to do? I was, well, I don't know what to do. Some of these things are literally like a drug, and you have to go scorched earth in order to give it up. And you have to turn off your internet. Oh, I can't do that.
Well, then you're going to be into porn, I guess.
Well, what are you willing to do,
right?
Yeah. The other part is just, what do you replace it with? Because if you don't replace it with, then you're just sitting around bored, and then all that desire to check out comes back. Mm-hmm. So you have to replace it with good things.
Yeah, the more barriers you put in. I remember I was helping this one guy who he had a really bad smoking addiction, and we didn't actually end up helping him because I think COVID hit and then we stopped meeting with him, and I left. But we were started to, and we had a 13-step how to quit smoking program, And each one, like the first step was like get them to say they'll do it, right? So first is like acceptance. And then was, remove all substances that are addicting out of the household. Okay, cool. And then the third one, I think, was remove anything that triggers the idea of those addictions out of the household.
Sure.
So, like stay away, and like stay away from things that trigger it. So if you watch a movie that has like cigarettes in it, and it's like, oh, I want a cigarette.
It reminds you.
Yeah, or
Hooks.
Stay away from, like a bar because there's alcohol, or like there's smoking going on outside, and
casinos for you.
You sniff it, and you're like, ooh, I want a little bit of that, And so it was like, cut out all the reminders of the addiction. It was funny too. It also said like have grapefruit juice because apparently like it deadens the sense. Like like if you feel the sense coming on, like you can smell it, taste it, like drink grapefruit juice because it deadened it for it. Like that's I guess it was a known trick that grapefruit juice helped kind of deaden the senses of that wanting that, that trigger. And then the other one was like obviously have like a family support system and accountability buddies and people you can like turn to. So it was pretty interesting because I mean everyone has addictions. Life is just full of addiction. Like everything you do is an addiction, right? You can be addicted to work, you can be addicted to, but there's some that are more harmful than others and produce more than others, right?
That's right.
But not having been through like something like a massive addiction in my life, reading that, I was like, oh wow, like there's a lot of steps to like really put barriers between you and that addiction if you're willing. But the first one, right, is you have to choose. That's like you're fully in on making the choice and making that decision. I think that's a big part. It's just like no one can force you. You have to make the choice. And then if you're really willing to make the choice, then the other ones are, you can do if you make that choice.
Probably the next most important one is to, depending on what class you're in or what program, you enroll somebody else in your vision where you tell them, I'm going to give this up. I need you to help me. I'm going to stop, but I want you to be my accountability partner. I just need to tell you because if I say it out loud to somebody else, that's very powerful.
Yeah. Well, isn't that like everything though? Like even ideas.
Oh yeah.
Because I know I've had ideas before where.
What do? We write it down. We put it on our mirror. I'm going to read my scriptures today. I'm going to study. I'm going to exercise. If I put it around to remind me and tell other people about it,
right,
then everybody else is reminding me too.
Especially if you get them in on it. You know? Like if it's like, oh, we have book club at this time, and everyone shows up, then you're going to go. But if it's like, oh, I have book club by myself, it's easy to fudge that.
Right.
Which is weird. You think that as people, because you tend to be, mindset-wise, we tend to be more focused on like ourselves, just in general.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to things that like are actually helpful to us, we tend to be the first ones that we throw under the bus. Why? Like, why is that? Do you think?
Human nature.
Yeah, but why? It's like I just think it's so weird. Like we tend to be the first people we throw under when it comes to things that are actually good for us, but like bad things, we tend to only think about ourselves.
Well, psychologically, you have to hear a good thing 8 times before it'll stick, but you pick up on all the bad things. That's how the news, if it bleeds, it leads.
Mm-hmm.
That's how the news makes their money because they focus on, accident or tragedy or death or something brutal. Is get rid of the TV. Yeah,
it's negative. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it's true. It's like the school teacher, right? You could have a teacher, you do like all these good things, and then you like speak out of turn in class, and that's the one thing she remembers about you is you're that kid that always spoke out of turn and never stopped talking.
You were good up to here.
It was like one time that you did it.
Labeled.
Maybe you didn't do it again, but that one time, and that's all they remember.
That's funny.
Which is crazy because I feel like it should be the other way around. But
what were we talking about before? Because there was a cool principle I wanted to share. No, I totally forgot.
We were talking about the 10,000 hours principle.
Yeah,
that's what led us off on this.
That's okay. It'll come back to me. That's a good principle.
So with your kids, because I know.
Oh, real quick.
Yeah.
Cool principle about habits, informing habits, in that just reminded me when you were talking about building habits or putting barriers or building support systems, and that is things that are easy to do are also easy not to do. So like we're trying to build a habit and it's like, oh, but it's so easy to get up at 6. Well, it's also easy to hit my snooze button and not get up at 6. It's so easy to eat this breakfast that I planned, but it's also so easy to skip that and go through the drive-thru and get something bad for me.
Right.
Anyway, there's this principle called things that are easy to do are also easy not to do, right? But you combine that with the principle of from the Slight Edge book, if you remember that one, which was if you're doing something for 30 days, you don't see the results until typically the last 3 days. You don't see anything happen. So like if you look at a pond full of lily pads and the lily pads double in number every day, the first day, one lily pad in a pond, you don't see it.
Right.
But it doubles. The next day there's 2. You still don't see it.
Right.
The next day there's 4. You still don't see it. But by day 15, then there's this little thing of lily pads over in this corner of this pond somewhere. But on day 28, it's half the pond.
Right.
And day 29, it's the whole pond. Or
Right.
29 and 30, whatever the numbers are. Anyway, that's the power of small, simple things done over time that compound their effects. So practicing
consistency.
Anyway, yeah. So things that are easy to do are also easy not to do. But if you do the easy thing consistently over a long period of time, you'll see a huge, huge result. Saving money, practicing an instrument, reading scriptures, writing in a journal, whatever it is.
Yeah, it seems like it's always the consistency is what really makes the impact.
Yeah.
It's just slower too, which another reason why in like today's society, I think that's half the battle because we're not used to like.
It's a sitcom.
Yeah.
It's done in 20 minutes after 10 minutes of commercials. You've created a problem. It's huge. You've solved it.
Right.
It's like.
Yeah, we're just used to we're used to everything being quick, easy, simple, convenient. I mean, we don't. It was interesting. I was listening to this one thing. It was talking about how back in, I think we were talking about this morning actually, but we were talking about how back in the day we had to like hunt for food and, we had to survive, like that was a daily battle.
You didn't farm, you don't eat.
Yeah,
there's
dead.
a direct correlation, right?
Yeah.
You don't hunt, you don't eat. You don't work, you don't get paid.
You don't
your
build
family
shelter,
doesn't eat.
Storm gonna kill you, wolf gonna eat you, whatever it is, right? Like
right.
There were daily concerns. That's like way back. But even like
even in the 18 and 1900s, 80% of their time was working or growing food or survival.
You had to live. You had to make it happen each day. And so, like obviously, we still have those instincts in us, the survivalist instincts. That's where you go on like Survivor or something. Like they're still there, right? But in today's society, at least maybe not everywhere. Like you're saying like in Africa or someplace there, like they don't have some of the issues we have.
That's right.
They don't even think about that stuff.
Some of the social issues that
we worry about, all the, whatever it is.
Right.
And I think it's because we have so much free time on our hands where we don't have to worry about our survival or really, surviving today,
right,
making today work, that we still have those instincts, but they just go for our, like, inside. They start,
We haven't grown up. We don't know what to do with all this extra time. We haven't all, some of us have and some of us haven't. We haven't, as a society, made it productive.
Right.
It's just leisure. We have leisure time. What do? We go to the movies, go to a game. We sit and play video games. We watch movies. We watch TV. 80% of our time is spent doing nothing. What are we doing?
And like the human mind is a problem-solving machine. That's what it's meant to do. It's meant to solve problems. So we ain't got real problems to solve. Not like we have problems, but not real problems. Like life or death problems or like survival problems.
Society has problems,
society
right?
has
But
problems.
we individually, typically, we don't.
And so, like, I think
my phone breaks. Oh, I'm going to go drop $1,000 on a new phone tomorrow. Can you afford it? Doesn't matter. I'm going to go get it. I have to have it.
Right.
Okay.
Is that a real problem?
Look back 100 years and tell me how that compares to.
Yeah, they didn't even have a way to communicate back then.
Right.
Hubby went out into the woods to go kill his meat. Like, you just hope he came back.
That's right.
You ain't calling him on the phone. Like,
send him a carrier pigeon.
5 days later, you could be, single mom, or you could be,
Truth.
Or he could be coming back with dinner.
Or the babies are sick from cholera.
Yeah.
How is that even an issue? That's not an issue.
Or dad returns home, there is no family. You know what I'm saying? Like, who knows? But, yeah, I feel like in a lot of ways, because life's become so easy, because it's just convenience and things are provided, like, our survival instincts, our mind, our problem-solving minds have just turned inwardly. And that's why I think we have sometimes a lot of, like, the anxiety, depression, because our mind is causing there. It's like creating problems to solve because we don't know what to do with it. You know,
It's true.
I don't know. It's just a theory. I don't know if that's true, but it was interesting. I heard that. I heard that kind of theory, and I was just like, "Oh, that's interesting," because it's true. Like, we still have those problem-solving instincts in us.
Right.
You know, that those didn't go away. So, you speaking of problem-solving, you worked with Verizon as a career,
Yeah.
and did a lot of like team building. You said problem solutions, administrative functions,
Change management, operations management. Yep.
So tell me a little bit about that. Like what got you into that career? Why'd you stick it out? Because that's the other thing too. Like nowadays, people aren't staying in careers like they used to. You know, that's just not as common.
Right.
Or like just the principle of sticking things out and like building something and saying like, I'm committed to this for the next 25 years.
Sure.
So just like tell me a little bit about that.
So, well, and society has changed a little bit. So knowledge workers 50 years ago, 75 years ago, they could learn a skill, and that skill would stay relevant for 30, 40 years for a career.
Right.
That hasn't. The amount of time that a skill is relevant has halved and halved and halved and halved again. And so where, 50, 75 years ago, 100 years ago, people would learn that one skill and it would carry them through a 40 or 50-year career, these skills are way more perishable. And so to stay relevant, you have to go learn a new skill. Now it's every 4 to 5, maybe 7 years.
Right.
Think of computer programming. There's all the languages 50 years ago are dead.
Right.
Mostly. And so to stay relevant in computer programming, you have to learn a completely new language and architecture typically every 5 to 7 years because it's just developing so rapidly. So where it used to be, I'm going to get out of high school and go learn a trade or go do military or go to college and learn a skill, and that was going to serve me. A lot of times that's not the case. Some of those skills are still relevant, but a lot of them are not. And so you'll learn a skill and you'll apply it for 5 to 7 years, and then you need to go learn a new skill or an enhanced version of those skills and go do that, which gives you flexibility. If I don't like what I'm doing, hey, in 5 to 7 years, I'm going to go switch.
Right.
And I'm going to. But now instead of having one skill for your whole career, now I have 5 to 7 different skills. Now you can solve the same thing different ways. So for example, I worked for the same company, but my career changed every 2 to 3 years.
Like what did it change?
Change teams, change focus, change projects. So we went from working with small call centers to working with regional call centers, and then we worked with national call center processes. And so there was just kind of this natural evolution in our industry where things changed. But then you learn a lot of cool things along the way, like change management is hard. Why is it hard? Because it's emotional.
Right.
People love routine. We will say we hate routine, but we love our routine. So
it's like good or bad?
It's good. It's good. It gives you focus. It keeps so you don't have to worry. It gives you stability. You don't have to worry about things.
Is it when it turns into a rut? Is that when it's bad? Sometimes.
Sure. Yeah, that's where the term "go postal" came from, because their job was monotonous and routine, and there was no change in it.
Right.
So their brain just checks out, and then you start thinking about weird things and do bad things. So it was good. It was a good career. Learned a lot of things. So we pioneered, at least for Verizon, working from home for specific job functions that typically weren't associated with working from home. And so it took, because our IT people, they had worked from home for years, and salespeople, they're out in the field anyway, so they might as well, they're just working remote. So we just took that idea of remote working and launched it into some other departments. But the biggest people that didn't want that were the management. Everybody down here is like, we love it. We want to go work from home. And all the management is like, if we can't see you, we don't know what you're doing. And it's difficult.
Yeah. Well, especially, that's the one thing I've noticed is working from home is great for the most part.
Yeah.
The only part that it gets really tricky on is when you are trying to get people behind a vision. Then it can be a little harder because like being there, associating with people, feeling the energy, that just, some of that you can't duplicate remotely. And so like, especially if you're building something, that's when it gets a little tricky.
Yeah.
Because people,
So all my teams were remote. I had people in all 4 time zones. But at the beginning of a big project, we would all come together for a few days because that did all those things. We would meet the new people on the team. We'd understand the project. We would get the vision. You spend some time together. Now we can go away and go do our things, check in remotely. It worked really good. And then, in the middle of the project, you come do it the same thing. You spend a week together, kick the tires, look at the thing, change plans, and, go back to work.
Yeah. So what made you stay in that career for the amount of time you stayed in it? Because
when I started, it was just a job. I just needed a job. I was just like, I need a job. Yeah. I just started a job. But then I worked hard. But that was my generation. We worked hard, and even if you didn't like it, you worked.
Right.
Plus I was married and had kids, so it's like, well, nobody else is. I got to make money.
Right.
I got to provide. So that helped. But changing focus every couple of years just was good for me because it reset and just gave me new energy for the next 2 or 3 years. So that helps.
That makes sense.
But we each have our own clock internally. Some people can only focus on a specific career thing for a month.
True.
Or 2 months. Those kind of people are really good in real estate.
Yeah.
Because each new house or whatever is a new project for them. Yeah. Some people are like 40 years. They go into the government because they have this long vision and they can keep at it for 40 years. Me, I'm about a year to 2 years. Mm-hmm. After about a year, I'm just like, I'm done. I don't care what it is. I'm done.
Yeah. I think people like the feel. Like there's something about feeling like you opened and closed it, right? Mm-hmm. That process. But yeah, the time stamp on for most people. Do you think that's exacerbated now because of just the fast pace of which we live and the,
I think things like TikTok and other things, it kills your attention span.
Yeah.
You tell somebody to sit still in a room for 10 minutes, they will go out of their minds because they have nothing to do. Because this has trained them and ruined, like literally broken their attention span in their brain. We got ADHD. If I put you out in the woods for 2 weeks, your ADHD will be gone.
So do you think, not to go full conspiracy mode on us, but do you think it's intentional?
Well, I know TikTok's intentional.
Yeah.
Do I think it started out as this malicious, intentional thing? I don't know. Has it turned into a malicious, intentional thing? Sure.
Well, I think people know. Like, it's pretty... Like, I think at this point, I think early on in social media, right, we just thought, it's a harmless thing. Mm-hmm. But I think at this point where it's been around so long, like everyone knows there's benefit of it. Like I think there's some great benefit, right? It connects us in some ways. That's loose. It's great for if you have something you're trying to promote and get out to people. I think it works great for that. So if you have a plan with it, it can be a great tool. Mm-hmm. But if you're just a consumer of it, then I think you're getting the short end of the stick. And at this point, I think everyone knows that. So, but I don't think the people that create the software have any intentions of changing how it's done.
They're making money. That's how they make money, or they affect social change.
Yeah. Well, and it is true. I think that's one of the biggest changes has been attention span and like the ability to think after utilization of it. Mm-hmm. Because you're just, in a matter of like 30 minutes, you may have watched, I don't know how many videos, but all about different topics and things. And, your brain loves it. Sure. Because it's
But then
engaged.
You turn it off, and now you feel helpless because there's all this stuff going on in the world that you can't affect. You have no influence over. It doesn't change your life, but if it affects you emotionally, and now you're stuck. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
The biggest thing I had to cut out was because a lot of people would ask me, okay, how do you wake up in the morning? Because for the most part, I can get up like 7 o'clock. That's pretty typical. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I like getting up earlier because I like to like get to the gym or something like that. Because there's something about like driving in the dark before everyone else is up, and you feel kind of like you just feel like a baller, like
beast mode.
You just feel like you're like owning everybody else because no one else is out there grinding.
That's funny.
But I was doing one of the things I told everybody was like, oh yeah, like you set your alarm, get up. I always try to like maybe go to the bathroom because it forces me to go get up and do something, so I'm not just like sitting in my bed. And then like. So I always tell people like, oh, we'll set an alarm, then like force yourself to get up. So like put your alarm on the other side of the bedroom, go turn it on or off. Go to the bathroom if you have to, like that might help. Drink some water, like do something to get your brain active. But then one of the things that was helpful for me, sometimes I'd hop on my phone and scroll a little bit because it like kind of wakes your brain up. But then I found myself, I'd be scrolling for, like 10, 15, 20 minutes. And then like it was such a bad start to my day because I felt so distracted and confused and like overstimulated starting off. And I couldn't refocus on what I needed to do that day.
Right.
And so that's one thing that of late, ever since I deleted Instagram and TikTok this past week, it's been so much easier to focus because I'm not hopping on there. But yeah, scrolling in the morning just set me off on a bad start because I'd just be distracted. Like even the stuff was good stuff that I was like listening to on there. It wasn't bad stuff, but it was just so distracted when I'd be off it. I couldn't remember what I was trying to do that day.
That's funny.
But so with your kids, that was one thing you mentioned a couple times here, and then on your sheet, like you talked about how you helped like all three of your kids struggle with some sort of mental health challenge.
Right.
Did that spur you to do like kind of where you're saying you're passionate about, life coaching and self-help and things like that? Does that spurred by that in any capacity, or has it always been something you've been interested about?
Well, that's a great question. Maybe. I think it was because how I was raised was fairly dysfunctional. Mm. And so when you are missing some foundation, you look around and see different ways people were raised, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. It's like I had a lot of self-esteem issues. I think we all struggle with that. That's a normal part of development. And depending on our support system, we can overcome that and just move forward with life. Well, I got stuck in some of that, and so I was exploring, trying to solve some of that. Mm. But there's a lot of really great ways to address some of those things, counseling and stuff. But no, I think having experienced some of that myself helped when raising my kids. Yeah. But then, you're always looking for, well, how can I address this, or how can I help with this, or how do we overcome this or that challenge?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I think it's when you want to find information on how to be better, like if you're searching, that's what matters, right?
Right.
Because that's probably the biggest step for people to take is like just start looking.
Yep.
Just start trying to figure out what like you want to do and what you need to do and how to do it. Because then it'll come, like, eventually. You'll find answers, and you'll put the pieces together.
And talk to people. Don't text them. Don't look on Google. Go talk to people, because you will find hidden gems. Not everybody's going to know everything, and not everything anybody says is going to help you, but somebody will say something that will help you. And that's, like you said, social media, which is funny. There's very little that's social about it, other than there's a lot of people doing it. But I don't know how much it helps. I don't know that it connects. I think you are connected, but then you feel helpless, even more helpless and alone.
I think it can be a tool for spurring some ideas, mm-hmm. but if that's all it leads to, if you never do anything with it, it's pretty useless.
And just to go back to my own spiritual roots, you can't create a relationship with somebody over text or email or internet or whatever. You have to see him and talk to him to create a relationship.
Yeah.
So it's like, which is kind of funny because we don't see or talk to our Heavenly Father, but we want to create a relationship with him. So it's like, well, how does that work? Well, he's not on the internet, but he will respond to us. This thing's
sorry, that's loose. We're gonna get it fixed.
Sorry. Anyway, that's another thing that you just hold on to. We all need anchors and a deep belief system that you spend time investing in and studying and thinking about and writing about, and that can anchor and create a really good foundation to your life. And without that, you're going to be the boat with no rudder. Just wherever the wind blows, that's where you go. And that is social media. Wherever the wind blows, you're just pushed around.
Yeah.
You have to choose a direction, and no matter how strong the winds are blowing in a different direction, you just keep going.
Right.
Or you find a safe harbor.
Well, I think some people think with that, like, that you can't change. You can't make, like, once you make a decision, you can't go back. And it's like most decisions are very, very, like, you can change those decisions. Mm-hmm. No, most decisions are not like written in stone.
Correct.
There are some, like, if you
Can you undo something you did? No.
No.
But that doesn't lock you in for the rest of your
Right.
life. You can move anywhere.
You can change your path. It's
Right.
not like you're locked in. And so I think a lot of people get worried about, oh, well, if I commit to this, it's commitment and I'm stuck and I can't, what am I going to do? It's like, no, you can just start. Make a decision, go for it, be consistent with that decision and who you are. And have your core principles. Have your core principles that you're consistent on.
Right.
But then just get started, go, and then it'll adapt along the way. Like it's gonna change a ton of times.
Right.
That's the one thing we know we absolutely 100% can be sure of is there's gonna be change. So just don't fight it. Just start. You know. I don't know why.
Wise words from Matty McCurdy.
Wise words from Matty. No, but
Don't fight it. Just start.
so one piece of advice we need to have another conversation where we talk strictly about relationships.
Sure.
I feel like you got like a knowledge on relationships. I just think it'd be fun.
Only, well, you have to have a few failed ones in order to have a successful one, maybe.
Just in like, you know, but like even just relationships like, you know, spouse relationships,
Sure.
friend relationships. But if one piece of advice when it comes to relationships, just hit us with one piece.
One?
Yeah.
Oh, only one? Humor.
Humor. Okay.
Humor
Why?
can de-stress or can overcome obstacles, can reach across a gap, can de-escalate a situation. Humor in the right way at the right time can be very, and I mean, in some parts of life, you're going to look back and laugh anyway. So if you can just laugh now, can you, even if it's just a few minutes later, just like, can you believe we were so upset about that?
Right.
I'm still upset about it. I know, but can you believe we were so upset about that? It just meant so much right in that moment, and now it's just this silly thing. I think that's funny.
Well, if you could smile through the hard times and the good times, like
Right.
it just makes it better, right?
It does.
It's easier. Might as well.
Might as well.
There's gonna be bad,
There's going to be bad times.
so might as well smile through it.
And honestly, that's another piece of advice, just life advice.
Yeah.
Just, you're going to live through it. All you can do is try to improve it while you're there. That's it. Wise words from David. You're going to live through it. It's not like whatever situation in your life is going to kill you.
Right.
Generally.
It's
Just you're going to live through it. It's going to be okay. Maybe not okay, but maybe that's the wrong way to say it. You're going to live through it.
yeah. You're gonna
Work on making it better.
Yeah. Just improve upon it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it may not be very easy to improve upon or much to improve upon.
Right.
But yeah, try and identify what there is to be learned from it. Because
Yeah. Find the hidden gems. You think about all these wisdom posters and motivational whatever, and it's like it took people 100 years to come up with that principle that you just threw it on a poster. It's like, I can't live my life by bumper stickers, but there are pieces of wisdom in some of those sayings that came from long years of hard experience. It's good to learn from.
But then you're driving behind one car and you read it and that just hits you different, you know?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. It's rare.
It's rare.
It's rare.
Yeah.
Depends on the car, too. If it's a cool car, it hits different.
Depends on who's driving it.
If it's a van,
If it's some
forget that.
little, anyway,
If it's a Prius.
It's a Prius.
If it's a Prius, I ain't listening to that advice.
just drive over to my truck.
Yeah.
What was that, Prius? Oh, couldn't.
All right. Well, David, it's been a lot of fun. And
Thanks for having
we
me. I
learned a
hope there's
lot.
some good tidbits in this. You
Oh,
can
that's
edit
great.
most of it out and be like, what the heck is he talking about?
full length vid.
We'll
is
come
going
back
on.
and talk about relationships.
Relationships
Sometimes that'll
another
be fun.
time. But thank you. Appreciate it.
Cool. See you.